following is a production of National Mortgage Investigation University. Mortgage Securitization, a Beginner's Guide. In this presentation, we will learn what securitization is and how it works, the differences between a traditional loan and a securitized loan, why your bank prefers to securitize your loan rather than hold on to it, who the players are in a securitized transaction, the frauds that took place, and the problems securitization creates. Prior to 1970, mortgage loans were originated at neighborhood banks that had personal relationships with their borrowers. The money used to create a mortgage was derived from a portion of depositors' cash reserves held at the bank. Quality loan underwriting was paramount to protect depositor funds and ensure the bank and its depositors earned dividends from interest-bearing mortgage loans. Once the mortgage was made, the original signed mortgage and promissory note were kept together, as required by law, in a safe place at the bank, to be returned to the borrower once the mortgage was paid off. A loan that is held by the originating lender in its own portfolio of investments while retaining the default risk of the borrower is called a portfolio loan. Today, just 10% of all loans are portfolio loans. 90% of them are securitized. Most often, a non-portfolio mortgage loan is pooled with thousands of other mortgage loans in what is called a mortgage-backed security. Portions of the overall cash flow generated by the borrowers who pay their mortgage every month to their alleged lender are sold in the form of interest-bearing bonds to investors all over the world. These investors include pension funds, municipalities, foreign countries, private individuals, and large investment banks. Another large bank, intentionally concealed from borrowers and working in a monopolistic fashion with the originating lender, and also the Wall Street Bank, which created the mortgage-backed security, is hired as a trustee to oversee aspects of the mortgage-backed security, such as cash flow management and issuing quarterly investment reports to investors. This process, which has been in existence since 1970 and has been applied to roughly 90% of all mortgage loans since the year 2000, is known as securitization. As you can see, with a securitized loan, the originating lender does not retain the borrower's default risk. The borrower, on the other hand, thinks the originating lender is their lender. That is not true. This is all obscured from the borrower. This is important to note and will become clear as to why this is later on in this presentation. The idea behind securitization is attractive. It allows banks to stay liquid by immediately selling mortgages they made so they can reap a profit and keep lending to more borrowers. This gives many more people an opportunity to own a home. Securitization is also supposed to provide long-term guaranteed returns for investors, all backed by steadily employed, well-paid American borrowers. Lenders pool and sell mortgages by the thousands. But as an example, let's just use one mortgage loan and show what happens in a securitized mortgage transaction. The originating lender, pictured here, makes a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage loan to a borrower for $250,000 at 7% interest. At this interest rate, the borrower will pay a total of $600,000 over the entire 30-year life of this loan. The originating lender can take this paper asset and sell it for an amount higher than the $250,000 it lent, but below the maturity value of $600,000, so that an investor who buys this paper can make some money over time as a result of the borrower making their mortgage payments every month. Originating lenders generally make a profit of about 2 to 10% of the original loan balance when they sell a loan to investors. In this example, the investors pay 5% or 5 points for a purchase price of $262,500. If the borrowers pay over 30 years, the investors have the potential to make over $337,000. The bank makes a $12,500 fee in this scenario and can make a new loan to someone else because they have also been paid back the original $250,000 they just lent out. They also have no more risk. It is the investors who must deal with the consequences of non-paying borrowers. Banks like to sell the loans they make within a 90-day period to minimize their risk exposure and turn a quick profit. An average mortgage-backed security contains 5,000 to 10,000 mortgages. As you can see, there is a tremendous incentive to make a lot of loans and make them quickly so enormous profits can be generated from fees charged to investors who purchase mortgages. In fact, it is the fees generated from selling mortgages which drives the process of securitization, not the long-term interest rate generated from holding on to the mortgages. Securitization allows for the investors who buy portions of the cash flow generated by a mortgage pool to earn dividends from the interest-bearing mortgages making up that particular pool. In order for this type of an investment to work, the borrowers must pay their mortgage every month or the investors will lose money on their investment. A mortgage-backed security is supposed to be a low-risk, long-term form of investing because the cash flow comes from homeowners and the investment is backed by real property. So why did so many mortgage-backed securities go bad in the past few years? And why are borrowers losing value in their homes, while others are losing their homes to foreclosure? The answers to these questions lie within the process of securitization. The convoluted steps in creating a securitized pool of loans opens the door for multiple frauds to take place. This can leave borrowers and investors financially destroyed, while the institutions involved in the securitizing of the mortgage loans reap large profits in the form of fees charged when they create, sell, and manage the loan pools. This is where we stand currently today. We are not trying to outsmart the smart guy. We are trying to sell bonds to the dumb guys. Mike Vranos, top Wall Street bond trader. Only through detailed investigative work can the true holder of a borrower's securitized mortgage loan be revealed. While most borrowers believe that the entity they send their mortgage payments to every month is their actual lender or creditor, it in fact is not. Tracing the roots of a mortgage after it is originated and funded will usually lead to a Wall Street mortgage-backed security found within a trust filled with 5 to 10,000 other mortgages collectively owned by investors. The securitization process is intentionally concealed from borrowers for reasons that are about to become crystal clear. The first step in securitizing a mortgage occurs when a borrower applies for a mortgage loan. This can be done through a credit union, a bank, or a mortgage broker. Banks and credit unions have the ability to fund a loan directly to the consumer, whereas a mortgage broker does not lend money but rather shops on behalf of the consumer to find a bank or other type of mortgage lender that can fund the loan. Credit unions usually only lend to their members using a portion of depositor funds and hold the mortgage loans they make as portfolio loans. This means that credit unions bear the risk of borrowers defaulting on their mortgages and must maintain strict lending standards. It is these strict lending standards which have kept credit unions outside the scope of the mortgage market meltdown. The second step of securitizing a mortgage loan is making sure a potential borrower is qualified to borrow under certain guidelines, which vary from lender to lender. Assuming the potential borrower is qualified for a mortgage loan under a particular mortgage lender's underwriting guidelines, the lender will approve the loan and begin underwriting it. Safe underwriting guidelines to ensure a borrower can pay the loan back have historically consisted of a credit history report with a middle credit score at or above 640. Most consumers have three credit scores generated by each of the three major credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. The lower score is used in the case that a borrower only has two credit scores. Late payments on any trade line, including credit card, utility bill, or auto loan, in the past 6 to 12 months are usually not tolerated. Borrowers generally must be at least 3 years removed from any personal bankruptcy to qualify for a home loan. A down payment of 20% verified to be owned by the borrower in their bank account for a period of 90 plus days. Other accepted forms of a down payment include 401ks, bonds, mutual funds, stock assets, and any other investments that can be readily converted to cash. For a refinance, 20% equity suffices for the down payment. 3 to 6 months of verified liquid monetary reserves beyond the down payment to cover the mortgage payment in case the borrower loses their income after the loan is made. An appraisal conducted by a neutral party and scrutinized by the lender's underwriter. An employment verification or business verification if the borrower is self-employed. An income and asset verification. A rental payment history verification consisting of 2 years on-time rent payments verified by the borrower's property manager, and any other underwriting guidelines imposed by the lending party. Between 2000 and 2008, these historically standard underwriting guidelines were loosened and/or completely canceled by mortgage lenders. During this period, anyone 18 years of age with a Social Security number could get a mortgage for 100% of the value of a home, and in some cases, even greater. This is because originating lenders use the covert process of securitization to effectively dodge the consequences associated with having to hold on to risky mortgage loans they make. With a pool of securitized mortgages, it's the investors who buy the bonds backed by the mortgage loans who are at risk, not the originating lenders who make the loans, quickly sell them, and then collect payments from borrowers every month by converting into a loan servicer. As we will explore in a moment, originating lenders make their mortgage-backed securities appear strong for an easy sale. The third step in securitizing a mortgage is the actual funding of the loan. Contrary to logic, in a securitized mortgage transaction, the originating mortgage lender isn't lending anything at all. In fact, the originating lender needs to get funded themselves before funding a consumer's loan. Mortgage originators familiar to most everyone include Countrywide Home Loans, which was bought out by Bank of America in 2008, Option 1 Mortgage, which is currently now out of business, and Quicken Home Loans are not banks and do not take a deposit. So where does their money come from, and how do they create the deceptive facade of being a lender? The answer to that question is what is known as table funding. Major Wall Street investment banks such as Goldman Sachs or the now defunct Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers supply originating lenders with money to make a mortgage loan in the form of a warehouse line of credit. Investment banks, also known as shadow banks, do not take deposits like everyday banks, but rather they raise capital from Main Street investors and trade the money entrusted to them for securities that yield a return, such as foreign currency, equities, commodities, fixed income instruments, or mortgage-backed securities. The funds for a warehouse line of credit can come from the shadow bank's own accounts, but this practice is not commonly used. Instead, Wall Street investment banks will pre-sell investment slots in a mortgage-backed security that does not yet exist to unsuspecting Main Street investors and money managers. Mortgage originators, familiar to a consumer's eye, then markets the money to consumers, who believe they are borrowing the loan originator's actual funds. So, in reality, average everyday Main Street investors are the real lenders in a securitized mortgage transaction, and the Wall Street banks, well, they're simply using the originating lender to market the money they raised from the very consumers they lend to. Both the investment bank and the originator earn huge fees in the process of creating, securitizing, and selling the loans to investors. Securitization, or the process of converting many mortgages into a large stock of different classes, is nothing more than a Ponzi scheme that has evolved into an enormous fee-generating machine for Wall Street investment firms, originating lenders, money managers, and the banks that oversee the packages of loans as a trustee. After a mortgage is pooled with thousands of other loans and sold to investors as a bond, the originating lender, which is the company that a borrower believes lent them money out of their existing assets, secretly converts to what is known as a mortgage servicer. This earns even more fees for the servicer/originator, which already made hefty fees from selling the loan back to the Wall Street investment bank, which initially supplied it with capital. Despite having no legal interest in the loan, because the loan has been sold, mortgage servicers will collect borrowers' monthly mortgage payments, take a small fee, and then forward the remainder of the payments to another bank hired to act as a trustee, which then distributes the dividends to investors that own the mortgage-backed security. This practice of table funding is extremely deceptive to borrowers and investors because it exposes them to unknown risk factors such as the quality of the loans that are being made. Think about it. If the Wall Street Investment Bank and the originator are using Main Street's money to create new mortgages, then where is the risk for these firms? Neither party is using their existing cash or has to bear the consequences of a defaulted mortgage. This is how the practice of making predatory loans to uninformed consumers, otherwise known as subprime lending, grew so rapidly between 2000 and 2008. It is also why any living person above 18 years of age with a Social Security number could qualify for a mortgage loan during this period. Simply put, banks cannot lend credit. There are numerous case laws that can be found at the bottom of this slide. During the mortgage boom years of 2000 through 2008, mortgage lenders were unwilling to make portfolio loans to borrowers due to an increased risk exposure resulting from poor underwriting standards. This fact was completely concealed from borrowers and the investors who bought the mortgage-backed securities. In fact, the entity named as the lender on a borrower's mortgage or deed of trust is never the actual lender in a securitized mortgage transaction. Table funding is simply the process of Wall Street investment banks getting into the mortgage game by using an already established and licensed originating lender to skip over mortgage licensing requirements, skirt banking regulations and capital reserve requirements. Most banks are required to keep a liquid monetary reserve of about 10% of the total loans they make. By making loans using other people's money and then selling them, this requirement can be completely averted and an unlimited amount of loans can be made. They also use table funding to avoid legal liability, which allows lenders to make predatory loans with not a care in the world for the Main Street investors they sell their loans to or the borrowers who eventually succumb to foreclosure as a result of borrowing on bad terms. They also use it to dodge taxation issues by passing tax consequences on to investors. And of course, they use none of their own money. Another important point to be made from securitizing mortgage loans is that the originating lenders pretend to be the borrower's actual lender after the loan has been sold to investors. This has actually earned them the nickname pretender lender. The technical name for this is loan servicing, so a pretender lender is a loan servicer. Once a mortgage is made and is sold in a mortgage-backed security, the originating lender, which no longer has an interest in the mortgage because it has been sold, becomes a loan servicer. Mortgage servicers perform the following tasks, which include but are not limited to the issuance of monthly payment coupons to borrowers, the collection of a borrower's monthly payments, performing basic accounting measures, forwarding the borrower's payments to the hired trust, which then distributes yields to the bond-holding investors who bought the tranche housing that particular loans within the mortgage-backed security. Partaking in any loan modification or short sale mitigation should be necessary and initiating foreclosures should the borrower go delinquent. For these tasks, the loan servicer retains a monthly servicing fee of about 5% of the borrower's payments. This is on top of the 5 to 12% profit of the total loan amount made when the loan was sold to investors. It should be noted that any action taken by a loan servicer involving collection of a borrower's payment, mitigating a short sale or loan modification, or initiating a foreclosure is illegal under a certain strict set of laws that govern mortgage securities. Remember, the loan servicer originated the loan as an originating lender, but never lent any money of its own. Once a mortgage is sold, it is permanently converted into a staff. It is no longer a mortgage and cannot be enforced as one. Yet, every day, the mortgage servicers collect payments, take fees, and then illegally seize people's property. The real owners of the mortgage, the investors who bought the mortgage-backed security, cannot enforce the mortgage either because it is impossible to determine who owns which mortgage in the overall pool. When one loan is pooled with 5 to 10,000 other loans to form one investment vehicle that is then sold as a stock represented by bonds to thousands of investors all over the world, then what you really have is a worthless piece of paper that borrowers continue to make payments to every month, and that investors continue to collect on every month with middlemen collecting fees on. What keeps the scheme going is either ignorance in securities law or belief that this process is legal. However, all actions are illegal So, why do originating lenders continue to service the mortgages they've already sold? Well, because if they didn't continue to service them, they would have nobody to sell the mortgages to. Do you think pension funds, municipalities, and other investors will buy a mortgage backed security and then service it themselves? The servicing of the loan by the originator takes the maintenance issues associated with mortgages out of the investment. Investors want passive income from mortgage backed securities, and that's what a loan servicer provides them. Another reason for originating lenders servicing the mortgages they make has to do with risk tolerance. Lenders don't like risk. Selling the loan and then acting as a servicer is profitable and keeps the investment passive for the investors. Servicing a mortgage provides a filter so the investors can never know the volatile nature of various loans in the pool. It allows the originating lenders to destroy the ability for borrowers and investors to have any type of a relationship, because if they knew the truth, the borrower and the investor would stop the lender from playing this game of making risky loans and selling them. Finally, servicing a mortgage after it is originated facilitates illegal foreclosures because the borrower believes the servicer is their actual lender. After all, that is who they make their mortgage payments to, and that was who they received their loan from. The servicer relies on this ignorance of the borrower and the court system to literally steal people's homes if the borrower can simply not pay their mortgage. If any entity had the ability to foreclose on a homeowner, it would be the investors, who become the true creditors to the borrower when they purchase the mortgage-backed security. But investors who buy the mortgage-backed securities cannot foreclose because they only own the cash flow generated by the mortgages turned into a stock, not the underlying rights to foreclose. It is common practice for loan servicers to trip a borrower into default by refusing or losing a borrower's payments, forcing the addition of property taxes or insurance policies on a borrower who has already paid them, stalling and ultimately denying a loan modification or short sale. And you ask why? Well, because foreclosure is extremely profitable for servicers. They've already sold the loan. The investors who have bought the loan do not know when a loan has defaulted. The servicer reports that. So before selling a stock in the mortgage-backed security, the mortgage tranches need to be rated for investment quality. This is done by rating agencies like Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's to signify risk levels to investors who buy mortgage-backed securities. The ratings agencies each use an alphabetic or alphabetic numeric combination scale to rate investment products, such as mortgage-backed securities. The simplest to understand is Fitch's rating scale, and it looks like so. The highest or AAA rated tranche within a mortgage-backed security is supposed to be made up of thousands of loans made to borrowers with pristine credit and terrific income. A AAA rating signifies that there is almost no chance of default on that particular investment. In fact, pension funds are only allowed to invest in AAA rated assets because of the low risk they pose. In a mortgage-backed security, the AAA rated tranche is designed to get paid before the lower rated tranches, even if certain loans have defaulted within this tranche. Tranches with increasing risk levels, such as the triple C through D tranches, have a lower priority of receiving monthly payments and are usually the first to be shorted income due to borrower defaults because these tranches house subprime loans. The practice of ensuring payments of one class of mortgage-backed security by using proceeds from another class is called cross-collateralization. Just like every step in creating a securitized pool of mortgages, issuing agencies generate enormous fees, especially if AAA ratings are issued on tranches of low-quality mortgages that should be rated much lower. It is much easier to sell high-rated investments, especially to pension funds and other large institutional buyers. It used to be that rating agencies charged rating fees to the investors who bought mortgage-backed securities for an objective evaluation of the true risk a bond actually posed. Historically, the rating agencies rarely bestowed their coveted AAA ratings on any investment vehicle, with the exception of U.S. Treasury bonds. But when it came to mortgage-backed securities, the rating agencies seemed to stamp AAA on everything. This is because at around the same time mortgage securitization began, the rating agencies began competing for business. They switched from charging the buyers of mortgage-backed securities and began charging the makers of mortgage-backed securities. This move opened up Pandora's jar, as Wall Street knew they could trap trillions of dollars of other people's investment money and life savings if they could make loans of any quality and pay for the AAA rating that would ensure sales of their toxic securities backed by, of course, garbage loans. In the aftermath of the mortgage bubble, recent investigations have uncovered high-risk investments being classified as low-risk AAA labeled investments. Individual states have blue sky laws which prohibit large institutional investors, such as pension funds, to invest in anything but AAA rated investments. Wall Street investment banks knew that if they could get AAA ratings handed out like candy, they could essentially make them assemble loans they knew would fail and trade it for cold hard pension funds and 401k cash belonging to millions of Americans earned, in many cases, over an entire lifetime. I wasn't out to invent the biggest floating craps game of all time, but that's what happened. Louis Ranieri, the inventor of the mortgage backed security.